China, but umkhonto sizmisele ukuwabulala.
We would like to honor the presence of some of the comrades from the first hour of the beginnings of Umkhonto Wesizwe who are here with us today.
That's a very difficult thing, huh? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to see all of you here. Here in the Western Cape, there are only 4 of us who are that old generation when MK was formed in 1961. We have here James April, Alfred Willie, General Ngose there. Without them, I would not have had much of the story I'm having, which we are going to be reading about.
Here, looking at this amazing book and this amazing man who wrote a really important story of our lives. And I was thinking a lot these last few weeks how to do justice to this. And my first moment of doing justice to this is to take this wonderful man in my arms and thank him for what he and these wonderful comrades of Umkhonto Wesizwe did for us. In a way, this book is a book of many, many roads to freedom. We could think of Sandi's body as an archive. And if it were an archive, on his body is the map of southern Africa, reaching into Russia, reaching into Egypt, reaching across water and land, a map that covers his story. And I want to just give a little overview of this map. Growing up in a very warm family life in Kwidlana in the Eastern Cape, young Sandi was imbued and influenced by politics from a very early age. And at St. John's School in Umtata, as a young teenager, he was recruited to the ANC Youth League and its discussion groups, which already were very, very incendiary and trained their minds on what was wrong in South Africa. It wasn't long before he joined active protest, which took on quite a drastic turn because the comrades said, why should the white education syllabus be different from ours? And when they weren't heard, they set light, they put on fire parts of the school, which ended up in the abrupt end of Sandi's school career. Then his parents looked at the situation and sent him to choose. Where do you want to go, Sandi, with your life? He chose Cape Town, having been there before, and quickly entered into the networks of the ANC and witnessed the banning of the ANC and the start of the underground clandestine struggle. It took him to the very first trainings of men who had agreed to be operatives in the armed struggle in Marmara, here in the Western Cape, where people like Albie Sachs taught the young comrades about things like electricity and communication and dealing with weapons and first aid, preparing them. It didn't take long for him to be sent to Johannesburg, from where he was sent under very secretive conditions via Botswana to join the ANC in Zambia. Many, many, many roads, waiting in dark places, in dark rooms, being very silent. Many hours in the back of closed-off trucks, having no idea where you're going. This all happening in the body and the mind of a very young South African. First military training happened in Egypt. Then from Egypt it was back to Zambia and then to Tanzania, where in Kongwa, Sandi joined a community of liberation fighters from all over southern Africa. People from SWAPO in Namibia, from Frelimo in Mozambique, from the MPLA in Angola. Sandi then left for the Soviet Union and underwent specialist training, and his career as an intelligence operative started. What strikes me in the accounts of Sandi's meeting with people in Egypt, people in Russia, was that he brought such great warmth to his trainers and officers, and that the human side of these relationships shines through this book. I want to fast forward. Sandi did return again at a later stage to the Soviet Union for specialist naval training. Sandi did a number of things which were building the foundations for the armed struggle in Southern Africa. And this has to do with this map that is on his body, because South Africa is far away from Tanzania. And the biggest challenge for Mkhonto with Caesar was how to engage the enemy, how to infiltrate into South Africa, how to find a way to build support for the armed struggle from within South Africa. And there were many attempts, of which he and his comrades, some of them here, were the pioneers. First, there was the attempt to do this through Rhodesia. In other words, entering over the Zambezi River through Zambia into Rhodesia, where they engaged with the Rhodesian forces, who were helped by South African forces, to build camps where they would recruit people and make an opportunity to go on further to South Africa. There were the famous Wankie and Sipolilo offensives, which were about working together with ZAPU of Zimbabwe and jointly with MK and ZAPU engaging the enemy in Rhodesia. I'm giving a broad, Sandi writes beautifully about all this. I'm trying to whet your appetite. Notwithstanding these attempts, it was not easy and it was not successful. The enemy was very strong, and although there were many sacrifices from the side of ANC and ZAPU, it did not succeed. So Sandi was withdrawn. He got involved in conflicts in the ANC where the cadres, where the rank and file of the soldiers who were doing the work on the front were challenging their leaders and saying, "You're not doing enough, you're not recognizing the work that's being done, what's happening here?" And that led to a renewal of the ANC. Sandi Sijake entered South Africa finally after 10 years of training and preparation and building bases and building the foundations of struggle in Zambia and Tanzania. Sandi entered through Swaziland, infiltrated back, and started operating in the Eastern Cape. I'm getting goosebumps to tell you this because what happened was that the enemy was on their tracks. What happened was that after a while, things got murky and Sandi was arrested and some of his comrades were arrested, and a time of darkness descended upon them, including incarceration under difficult conditions and torture, and finally 15 years of Robben Island. The book stops when Sandi is released from Robben Island. I want to now start asking Sandi some of the things that crossed my mind, having given you a broad map. So Sandi, how did you go about writing this book? Because in your book you have tremendous amount of details. You remember the name of comrades you would meet in dark houses in Botswana and Zambia on the back of trucks. You would remember the name of people you would be training with in Russia. You had such an immense amount of people in your life, and they come alive in your book. And you've been to places all over the world, and you describe them in a way that they come alive to us. How did you make your hard drive, your computer, produce the data? How did you do this?
Thank you very much for the question. Here, in fact, we, as you have outlined, is that we were dealing actually with a situation where there was very little needed to write. Everything underground wanted to actually keep in your system, and you become part of that system. Like even it's part of the training, if you go into an environment, you need to take as much detail as possible and internalize it so that you can go forward. But in my case, I met this group of very wonderful people, but not as a group at the same time, but small groups who ended up being a huge group as when we reached Congo. Then all of us were driven by one desire to liberate South Africa. And in that situation, we were, in fact, informed to keep the knowledge of what had happened to where we were from time immemorial up to what we were, the time we were being engaged as part of that MK group. So that memory helped me to actually be able to take part of that. At the same time, I was also encouraged by the fact that so many people we have lost, and they have lost their voices, were from falling in the battles. And there are very few, of course, who passed away as a result of natural actually processes, you see. Attrition, natural attrition. But the majority of them, they were part of myself. We lost them, as you will see in the book, in these battles. These are the people. I felt it was imperative on me to ensure that their story and who they were reaches their families, reaches their children and their grandchildren, so that they should know who these people were, what really they did, and how they went about, and what were the challenges and the issues that were supportive of them to continue to pursue that part of the struggle. And of course, my family also, they encouraged me that, I must also put down that which I was grateful, as you read there. But the critical aspect was that. And lastly, what has been very, very important in my case is that we in South Africa, mainly in the ANC liberation movement, were most lucky people than any other liberation movement in Africa. Because when we entered the armed struggle, we had already a program of what really freedom meant to us. In other African countries, we met, as you mentioned, SWAPO, Frelimo, ZAPO, MPLA. They didn't have that, but they were fighting for freedom. But ourselves, we're saying, no, whatever happens to us and with our struggle, this is the Freedom Charter. This is how the South African community is going to engage to rebuild South Africa, to ensure that there is healing in the country. That was the situation.
So, Sandi, I want to pick up on really the last thing you said, how the advantage you experienced was that the ANC had a program. The ANC was the oldest liberation movement in Africa. And you come back to this a number of times in your book, the theme of the Freedom Charter. You bring it up in relation to the non-racial struggle. You speak about that with great passion and many times. You bring that up also in relation to the conditions that need to change in South Africa, that there was, in your mind, the need for fundamental transformation in order to meet the call for equality and justice of the Freedom Charter. Speak a bit about how the Freedom Charter became such an important document and a leading vision for you and other comrades in the ANC.
The Freedom Charter became very important in one and many ways. First and foremost, it ensured that we realize that we are one community, irrespective of skin pigmentation or different cultures. It didn't matter much, but it was that as South Africans we were one community, and as such we had basically one culture. That culture actually is embedded in the way we produce and distribute our means of life and support, be it in the agricultural field, be it in the mining and many other aspects, and education, but that we were one person and we shared one thing. There was no country for this specific South African group or that, but it was that we share and belong to one single country, and we're one single people ourselves. So in the other end, in our interaction, we had experienced actually the interaction as you outlined of people like Dennis, late comrade Dennis Goldberg, who said, their involvement in the struggle, in the armed struggle also, was because they have seen the lie of the system of colonialism in South Africa, and were part and parcel of that force that is required and needed to transform South Africa into what actually was enshrined in the Freedom Charter. Those were actually also strengthening things. It was not just ourselves being there alone, then the involvement of quite a number of other people, and of course, whether in the trade unions and in the political parties, but there was one common approach of ensuring that South Africa, as one people, we need to ensure that we are one. So that is a part that can also calculate for the issue of non-racialism, and also the issue of single culture in South Africa with a number of substream culture, because in any country there is always one mainstream culture. And that doesn't exclude whether you can call it a minority or a majority culture. Those are subcultures in a society. So that was the critical thing that brought us together. And also the determination of everybody I met was by itself an indication to me to be also more strong, to link up and be up to the same standard with everybody.
So, Sandi, when I read your book, I would again and again come across a person who had an unwavering enthusiasm and dedication. So you describe conditions which really any normal human being would just think, I've had totally enough. So there's this burning flame. So it makes you go through a lot of things, and it also drives this desire, I want to reach home, I want to fight. I don't want to be in exile, I don't want to be in Congo forever. You were fighting to go home to fight. Now, what is that? What was driving this flame in you?
I believe that leaving South Africa, all of us, in fact, who were there, had the same desire, but also this had a history. Because in our history, we were taught here before by a number of people, including the Simons family, as I write there, and many other families. You see, we caught even at school, as I was telling you about this, how the teachers actually taught us about the fighting. But in that teaching, there were issues which actually became very much important. One of the issues is that in the 1660s, for instance, around here, there was a Chief Gogosa who was a major chief around there. When actually they wanted the Van Riebeeck administration to open the way for them to go and collect the raw salmons along what is called today Lion's Head and so on, they were actually prevented and some skirmishes started up. Now, what stuck with me was that one or a number of their fighters, who was called Trosowa, was actually captured. They put some stones and he was sunk between Robben Island and the mainland, kept alive. Now, the second aspect is that during the 100 years of war, one of the Xhosa kings was beheaded by the British. His head is not yet back in South Africa. It was not in South Africa when we were fighting, because that was the ways of decolonizing. The other aspect, the last one, I don't want to bore you much about that. The third aspect When King Dinizulu fought before he was arrested and taken to St. Helena, the British took sewage water and put in a swimming pool, and he was made to wade that side and this side, and they were laughing at him. So those things, actually, they don't sit well with when you are fighting for freedom and wanting to free people. But we appreciated also the issues of people who actually stood up as opposing actually the government of the time. It's not also from the white community, which has happened right through. But these were the things which strengthened the desire that is a situation that must be corrected and changed for the better for the people as a whole. This is actually happening in our community and to our people. So those were very much important things, which carried us with that desire, and most probably in the anger that this needs to be corrected during our lifetime.
As I hear you speak, and I understand that the fire comes from knowing history, knowing what those who went before experienced, knowing how the difficulties of the present have a story. As I hear that, I suddenly realize that this book itself is doing the same thing. This work of memory gives us the fuel, those who are in the present, the young generation that's coming now, the fuel to take further this work of liberation, because they understand what went on in your time, because they understand the record of the memory of your life. So that's a beautiful cycle. And was this the reason why you also wrote this book?
We were very much passionate that what is enshrined in the Freedom Charter should see the light of the day in South Africa, not necessarily as something written on stone, but where people in South Africa could engage with each other and show what can be made suitable for these conditions of today. As it was written that time, the situation was not as it is today. But also to help young people to understand the importance of unity as a South African community and the importance of working together in order to overcome many challenges. Because as it is, we managed to survive ourselves because we worked together, and also we always worked together with the people at home where possible. And that is what it took us very long, and also ensured that we realize part of our goal. But the issue was really to ensure also that the South African community has a responsibility to take us where we are today to a really better South Africa, which might be even better than what is enshrined in the Freedom Charter. I can't say anything better or best, is only what is enshrined in the Freedom Charter.
I want to point out that this book has many remarkable qualities. It's, on the one hand, an eyewitness account. It's told from the perspective of Sandi Sijake growing up in the struggle, what he witnessed with his own eyes. It's not the stories of what he heard from other people. But that narrative of the I, is always spoken on behalf of the we. We read a story that's told from the perspective of the team. He's a team player who's telling about his team. So much so that sometimes you've got to remember how he came to be on that team, because he's not making much of that. And so we get to know an incredible amount of people. So right now when we're in this room, we're actually in the presence of literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have crossed Sandi Sijake's path. And I wanted to ask Sandi, by choosing to tell the story in this way, as a team player, as the I that talks about the we, what made you choose this form of narration?
From the beginning, I don't remember myself doing anything alone. Very, very few things which will be just personal things, you know, like answering the call of nature, that's what I do alone. But when it came to issues, even at school, I did everything with other learners and scholars. Whether it was to recite a poem, where we would remind each other what the other one has forgotten. It was always a teamwork. And you, as you mentioned, St. John's College, you'll find that when also we were doing one of the Xhosa Wars with the British, our teacher reciting in Xhosa, we used to stand up, and when it was the issue of the stepping, it was Wadla, Umti, Umti Wachiteza. All those things, we were doing it, reciting, standing up, you know, and also imitating the battle, the flow of the battle. Hence, when everything was also coming to the issue where the British actually did not allow our people to go to bury the dead, we all cried, exhausted. You see? Because of that, you see, those are the things which, as it is, I don't remember anything which I did alone myself. So in my life, it has been the life where I was doing things with other fellow human beings. So the naughty stuff also, when we burned at the school in St. John's College, a few classes, I was not alone. You see, we did it as that group. And quite a few of us were expelled. It was not just myself. So as I'm saying, even the story we talk about, leaving South Africa for military training, I was not alone. Military training I never did there by myself.
Reading this book was your story, but also learning social history of South Africa. I wondered, was that a conscious intention? Did you set out to write a book that would also teach us our own history?
My story, I believe, it is a story of everybody who was involved in the struggle, everybody who intends to contribute to the struggle to improve South Africa, and everybody who today is engaged on that journey, because it is the story that has actually driven by the desire to have a healed South African society or a community as a whole, so that we can go forward as one person and dedicate our lives to ensuring that each of us is what is because of the rest of the other people. And because in my understanding is that even the issues of our operations in Wangi, Sipolilo, and our Aventura trip, it contributed in shifting even the thinking of the colonial system. Because also that was dangerous to them also. And that meant they have to rethink whether it is still necessary to continue doing the same things.
And on that note of healing and a narrative that promotes healing, I want to just alert the audience and the people who will read this book that Sandi does not shy away to witness and communicate and share with us the witnessing of the dark moments of the struggle, when the fact of exile and underground work led to a disconnection between leaders and the cadres and the people of South Africa, led to problems of accountability and abuse of power. Sandi witnesses that. And as all healing, we need to witness the trauma that is there in order to overcome and heal it. And I think this book is a very powerful showing of the road of how we do that. That mixture of honest accounting that doesn't shy away, and also bringing the togetherness of everybody into that story. So Sandi Sijake, thank you so much for your book, for your life, for your love.
afternoon, everybody. I'm Luyolo. I'm here because my father was also a freedom fighter. And that's really the only relevance I have to this setting. In fact, that's my father. So, so it's a great moment because we've been working on this book for a long time, almost a decade. So it's wonderful to be here marking this moment with him. So we're now going to have some time for questions and answers. So I'm going to run around with this mic, and if you've got a question, you can raise your hand. The question was, is there a way that democracy could be sustained? So, is that right? The peace, the freedom, the ideals that you fought for could be sustained. What's the approach to the sustainability?
I believe myself that the issue of democracy it has never been static. It evolves and it changes from one generation to the others. It will depend, in fact, what type of values and norms future generations and ourselves actually will be taking up and as the main anchors of their better life, where they can live peacefully and enjoy working together. Because in most cases, the conflicts we have, they are over resources. That you have diamonds and I have sand. Then I would like your diamonds, and you want my sand to build your houses. Then we have to fight over that. But once the people come to a situation whereby they can have a system of managing this in the benefit of everybody, then that will always enhance what we would refer to as democracy. But the breakdown in some aspects of that type of life will always lead to a very unstable democracies. Because we can see today in the leading countries like the United States of America, some of the people, they doubt if they are still a democracy. But they say they are a leading Western democracy.
I also wanted to share one comment, since you allowed for comments. I think the Chinese. So I think one thing that the book did for me is that my father's always been incredibly optimistic and has always shared with me very, the positive, light-hearted side of his story. I only learned through the book, for example, that he was ever tortured. I never knew that from him. And so the book, for me, allowed me to kind of discover you and meet you anew in a fully rounded sense, as someone who experienced difficult things and really as a full human. So was that part of your intention with writing this book, giving humanity and a face to the people who underwent those difficult, uncomfortable things with you?
In our life, in the struggle, fortunately enough, as I'm saying, there are these three comrades here. We argued, we quarreled, in fact, but we never stopped loving each other and also going into battle with each other. Don't say no because you did this to me, you say. Then it's done with the two of us. We built actually a very unique type of community whereby some of the things we enjoyed, even times actually of thinking about the parents at home. Sometimes we never shared how strong the feeling, you see, about my family and so forth. Because this became a family, which at that moment I must take direct care and direct responsibility. So from that time onwards, then some of the things which are more personal, we always shift aside and focus into a bigger picture. What do we feel as this community of freedom fighters, or as this community of South Africa, what is it that we feel? So those were most important things, and the torture happened in a very short space of time, I think about a week time, and everything was over and done. But it remained, the scars remained, like many other scars, as it were, but we have carried on, and we learned actually that the most important thing is to honor and love each other in order to go forward with long we have one common purpose. That was the thing. But now the last aspect, which I might say, in politics actually there was the issue of left and right. In the ANC we never had left and right, because the people we found there, like Oliver Tambo, actually Dadu and others, they say, look at yourself. You have a left and a right. Just imagine if you have only the left only. Thank you. In the ANC, we never actually believed that, for instance, our attempts of infiltrating people back home were a total failure. Each step had an impact, some of which were invisible. Like I said here, that for instance, when we sent these three comrades, actually, they were physically in Wangi. Their presence there shook the greater part of the world. That was an impact. Whether they arrived at a destination or not, but that it was felt and recognized that the ANC is, as a liberation movement in South Africa, on a path to actually liberate South Africa. The same thing in 1968 about Polilo, the same thing. And also in 1972, when we were intending to land in the Eastern Cape around Tafufu, in Lusikisiki, the system felt that it had an impact on the South African colonial system. So that was the situation. Now, when 1994 came, it was up to everybody who voted the ANC and the members of the ANC to do what the ANC actually had been priding itself, that the people of South Africa will be taught how to be a united nation of South Africa. Now the issue one could ask, even for yourself, as you say, you were part of the people who went to abroad for training, not necessarily here. How much did you teach in the spirit of the letter of the ANC, those people in South Africa who had not had the privilege of a banned ANC, that now, as we are here, this is the line, the direction we need to discuss and debate in order to achieve what we're looking for. I think those are the aspects of, without in fact putting a blame on any individual or anybody, to look at ourselves, what did we achieve within the community we were together, and what are we doing today to achieve that? Thank you very much for your question. And of course, that chance is that your question, in fact, is asking me, what am I doing about the present situation in South Africa? Which is a very serious challenge, because though you have put it in a very diplomatic way, but it is very, very interesting that with this chance I'm having, what am I doing to improve the situation in South Africa as it is today? The Then what I can say to you, apart from that, today I'm launching the book here, which is a great thing, one greatest mind. But I believe that if we can meet outside the gathering here, we can talk about that. Because I don't believe this is a forum where I can tell you. If I was a member, I was a political leader of any of the political party, but I would tell you, but I'm not. I am myself, but that requires a side discussion. What Sandi Sijake is doing about this South African situation today. After you have done all that thing, you will say you have done. That's a great question. Thank you very much. I believe myself what I was made to believe, and I grew up actually with that belief. And I've seen it working for quite many people, that we as humans or members of community, we must never strive for individual opinions to be the only opinions that matter. The number of the collection of the different opinions, when put and properly streamlined together, they make a bigger picture of whatever we can aspire to. That is the issue I believe in South Africa we are still struggling with also. What do we see as a common picture? And any common picture is not made of one or two aspects. That's why I was saying one time it was very interesting with us as young people. We liked to say, no, we don't like the right, we want the left, The left, it was associated with communists and all that. Then the people who were in front of us, as I'm saying, people like Dr. Dadu, Oliver Tambos, Moses Cotton, they say, but can you tell us of one natural component that actually has only the right or only the left? And with that, you come to start thinking of and all systems, they go forward because of the existence of these contending sides. You see? And they help each other in most and many ways. Where you have put your left foot, your right foot might be balancing you behind so that you are able to get ready to take the next step. So that is what I believe, what your question actually requires to look at. That of having what is our common picture, which serves our common purpose as humanity. Thank you very much.